Hello everyone and welcome back to academicscope. Today we're covering topic 2.4 price in GCSE economics. This is one of the most important topics and I guarantee that an Analyze 6 marker will come up for this every single year in your GCSE. So, this is what the specification requires you to know. Explain price as a reflection of worth and its role in determining an efficient distribution of resources. Explain what is meant by equilibrium price and quantity. Draw and analyze the interaction of demand and supply. Explain the role of markets in the determination of price and the allocation of resources. Analyze how market forces of supply and demand affect equilibrium price and quantity. You might realize that the two analyzed statements are vaguely similar. This is because they are practically the same. It just depends on what the question is asking you, but the process of answering it is basically the exact same. And there are a lot of definitions that you need to know in this, but they are very easy marks, so I recommend you revise this very well. First, you need to know the difference between price versus worth. On the bottom right is a famous quote by Warren Buffett. It may summarize this, but you still need to know the definitions. Price is the sum of money you have to pay for a good or service. It is determined by the interaction between supply and demand. Although price is used to indicate worth, it is not an accurate measure of worth in all cases. People might be willing to pay different prices for a good or service in different situations. This is because of scarce resources. For example, a water bottle in your local corner shop might be £1, but in a desert, water is very scarce, so it might be increased to £10 or maybe £20. Therefore, worth can change depending on the situation. A water bottle is much more valuable to you in a desert than it is right now. Worth is how much someone values a good or service. It varies between different people due to fashion and situation. And efficiency is the optimal production of scarce resources. What is the role of price in determining an efficient distribution of resources? There are three methods you need to know. Signaling is when prices change to signal to indicate where resources are needed. Transmission of preferences is when producers send information to suppliers about changing needs. Higher prices will encourage owners of resources to supply more. Because of profit motive, they want to gain more profit. Rationing is when producers raise prices to ensure only those willing and able to pay are allocated resources. It's often done when supply is very inelastic. For example, at a football match, supply is perfectly inelastic as it can't increase at all, no matter what the price is. Therefore, clubs may increase the prices to very high to ensure only those willing and able to pay are allocated tickets. When demand increases in a market, the price mechanism operates to restore equilibrium. The process can be explained using the key functions of the price mechanism above: signaling, incentivizing, rationing, and the allocation of resources. Price mechanism. This is one of the most common 6 markers. When they ask you to analyze something using a diagram and explain the effect on price equilibrium, this is how you have to answer. You can often get 3 to 4 marks by just drawing the diagram, describing it, and giving very basic analysis. But to get those 6 marks, you want to do exactly this. Let's take this example question. When demand increases in a market, the price mechanism operates to restore equilibrium. It can be explained using the key functions of the price mechanism. Initial equilibrium. At the start, the market is in equilibrium, where the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. This is represented by the intersection between the demand curve D1 in the diagram and the supply curve S at price P1 and quantity Q1. Market change. Let's say there's an increase in demand. When there is an increase in demand, the demand curve will shift to right, from D1 to D2, also seen in the diagram. This may occur due to factors such as higher incomes or rise in the popularity of the product, but you have to use the extract and make sure to say, as seen in the case study, as this will get you those application marks and make it easy for your examiner. You want to describe the diagram here. The demand curve shifts right from D1 to D2. At the original price P, there is now excess demand or a shortage. The quantity demanded at D2 exceeds the quantity supplied. Now there is excess demand. Therefore, the initial price P is no longer sustainable, as consumers now demand more than what is supplied. This creates upwards pressure on the price due to shortage. Now is a signaling function. The higher demand and the shortage signal to producers that consumers are willing to pay more for the product. This encourages suppliers to raise their prices due to profit motive. The price mechanism, through the signal of higher prices, communicates to firms that they need to increase production. Now we move on to incentivizing function. As the prices rise, it provides an incentive for producers to supply more of the good or service. Higher prices make it more profitable for firms to allocate more resources to the production of this good, shifting resources away from less profitable areas. The rise in price also serves as a rationing function, which we mentioned earlier. As the price rises, supply expands, seen on the diagram. There's a movement along the supply curve from QS to Q1. Below you can see the summary of the diagram movements and the summary of the price mechanism functions. Beware, you're not meant to write this much for a 6th marker. This is simply an explanation. What I would completely skip in an actual exam. The initial equilibrium part, you don't need to write that. You need to write all of the diagram movements and summarize the price mechanism functions. I would say definitely mention application from the case study and talk about incentivizing and rationing, and make sure to draw the diagram accurately, as you can gain 3 marks just from doing that. And don't forget the definition at the very beginning. What is the role of price in determining an efficient distribution of resources? Prices in a market system are the means by which the allocation of resources take place. They distribute scarce resources among producers and determine how resulting goods and services are allocated among consumers. In a market system, scarce resources are rationed, incentives are given to producers to supply more, and signals are offered to both producers and consumers and to the owners of the factors of production. In a market economy, consumers will have the power to influence resource allocation. Their spending decisions will send signals to producers about what goods to produce. For example, if all consumers are purchasing a specific type of pen and not purchasing, for example, a fountain pen, this signals to producers that they need to increase the production of the first pen and decrease the production of the fountain pen. Consumers determine what is produced and for whom it is produced, and thus rule the market. Market forces are factors that determine price levels and the availability of goods and services in an economy without government intervention. Now, here's a practice 6 marker. Using a diagram, analyze how the market forces of demand and supply could affect the equilibrium price and quantity of airline flights for passengers at this airport. Pause the video now, take a few minutes to read the case study and using the video to answer this question. Great. Now, let's move on to what the mark scheme says. Using a diagram, analyze how the market forces of demand and supply could affect the equilibrium price and quantity of airline flights for passengers. On the left is a diagram you should have drawn and is given by the mark scheme. Make sure to draw it exactly like this, as you don't want to lose these 3 marks. Now, first you have to give the definition. I hope you define equilibrium price. Equilibrium price is the price at which quantity demanded equals quantity supplied, and there is no excess supply or demand. The demand shifts right from D to D1, as seen in the case study, which is stated it increases by 42%. The supply also shifted right from S to S1, as seen in the case study, because more airlines started to operate there. These are application and will get you those maximum marks. The increased demand leads to a rise in price and quantity. The increase in supply leads to a fall in price but rise in quantity. The extent of the changes depend on the price elasticity of demand and the supply, and the size of the shifts in demand and or supply. This is what the mark scheme says, but I recommend you use the price mechanism, which I've explained in this video, as the mark scheme is very scarce in some areas, and it often doesn't explain the question in very well detail. Thank you for watching Academic Scope, and hope you come next time to watch 2.5 Competition. Make sure to check the link in the bio to join my Discord community to communicate with a group of like-minded students hoping to achieve the best grades. We share revision techniques and we do live past paper walkthroughs. Thank you for watching.